Hello, everyone, and welcome to day three of FCI Live 2025. We are excited to have you here, and we know you are excited for this session. We have some incredible attendance and registration for this, our effective community outreach session with the Bronzeville Food Co-op team. We will be turning this over to them in just a moment. Real quickly, we want to thank our champion sponsors who have made this entire series possible, National Co-op Grocers, Dot Co-op, and Colluminate. We are so grateful to them for making this series possible. So we're going to get started here in just a second. I'm JQ Hanna, the Interim Director of Food Co-op Initiative. Thank you for being here and being part of this series. And this year, we asked if cooperators, startup food cooperators wanted to propose ideas for their own sessions. And we are so glad the Bronzeville Food Co-op team reached out to us and we said, if you have an idea, toss us an idea. We got a detailed outline. And I think you're going to learn that's the kind of people you're talking to. It was a terrific, well fleshed out idea. And so we worked with them and asked them if they would put on this session. And clearly it has resonated. There are dozens and dozens of folks who have registered to be here part of the session. And you're here to hear them talk, not me. So I am going to turn it over to their facilitator, Bonnie, to kick off our session. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Cool. Thanks, JQ. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, I'm just have the honor to be helping facilitate this dynamic conversation. I'm Bonnie Hudspeth, she, her pronouns. I work with Firebrand Cooperative, and I help organizations and businesses achieve their goals through aligning their values, culture, and operations. And I've been lucky enough to be in the food cooperative movement for almost 2 decades now. And today I have this honor of facilitating the session with the rock stars who you're going to get to meet from Bronzeville Food Co-op. They are based in Columbus, Ohio. So, Karima is going to be sharing the PowerPoint. So they put together some great slides. And we're going to be talking about effective community outreach. And we're going to have the opportunity to learn from these organizers about how their co-op's vision and values informed their outreach strategy, their community survey design and implementation process, and we're going to briefly check out what did their survey results show them so that you all can leave this session with practical tips and tools for applying these strategies in your own community. And guess what? These tools are going to be shared with you afterwards because these are generous cooperators. They're all about Principle 6, P6. So FCI is going to send out these tools, including a sample of a copy of their survey within 48 hours of the session. JQ mentioned there's a lot of people here. So what we're going to do is post your questions in the chat throughout. I'll be watching for them, and we're going to have time for questions at the end. And if needed, I can interrupt with a couple clarifying questions sprinkled in if there's something they're talking about that is a brief clarifying question. But we're going to save most of those questions for the end because there's a lot of story to share. All right, so now let's meet the team. Maybe just, yeah, there we go. Okay, now you see who they are. I'm not going to introduce them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but you're going to be hearing a piece of this story from Karima, Karina, Juliana, and Eric. They're going to tell you each about their contributions to this community organizing and outreach and survey building process. So I'm going to turn it over to Karima first to talk more about the project background and kind of build the foundation for y'all.
Great. Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, JQ, for the introduction. We are honored for this opportunity to be able to dialogue with you all today. We are a startup co-op. We're very new in our phases. You'll get to learn about kind of where we are in our stage, but we're grateful for SPCI for just providing such great resources for us as we begin our journey. And I'm recognizing a lot of names here on the participant list, some of whom we had the honor of meeting at our I'm getting a delivery. It's horrible timing. So we had the honor of meeting at the Up and Coming Food Co-op conference. So I'm going to get started with my introduction here. Karima Samadi. I work at Columbus Public Health, which is the city health department, in the Center for Public Health Innovation as a policy analyst with a focus in food systems. I got involved with the Bronzeville Food Co-op through a food access mapping project. Thank you all. Those who have animals can maybe relate to the struggle and the horrible timing of it all. Um, Columbus Public Health had been researching the harmful impacts of redlining in communities through an Undesign the Red Line exhibit. Hold on one moment.
And I'm going to talk while her animals bark. I think it was a dog, right? All
Perfect.
right.
Thank you all. This we did not rehearse for, so you can only prepare so much. So thank you all for understanding the struggles of being human. But I work at the health department. We have been researching the harmful impacts of redlining in communities through an Undesign the Red Line project. Undesign the Red Line was an exhibit that explored the history of structural racism caused by 1938 redlining maps and how the inequality really continues to impact communities today. And we focus on ways in which we could come together and undesign these systems with intentionality. So we know that food deserts, and I'm using air quotes for those of you who are food justice warriors and know about food apartheid, but we know that they have lasting effects. They are one of the lasting effects of redlining, and through that, public health researchers at our health department mapped on two.
Karima, did you want to advance the slide? I
Oh,
wasn't sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Through the dog bark struggle, I missed my rhythm there. Thank you, Karina. So we know that food deserts are lasting effect of redlining. We did a mapping project where we identified the Near East Side, aka King Lincoln Bronzeville, as one of the largest food deserts for social vulnerability and grocery proximity in Columbus based on population density. A note about Bronzeville, and you'll get to hear a little bit more about the community through everyone else, but it originated in Columbus in the 19th century as a settlement of freed and escaped slaves, later expanded due to the Great Migration and restrictive housing policies, becoming one of the largest African American neighborhoods in the country. And there are many Bronzevilles throughout the country. Chicago is one of the most notable Bronzeville communities. But by the 30s, as you can imagine, there was a decline with suburban migration. Some of those Black-owned businesses and entertainment and art began to decline, especially in the 60s. So in response, our city has launched various revitalization plans to help promote some new development. Food access has long been recognized as a need in the community. So I got involved through the mapping project, but also a community conversation where I was invited to talk about the work I do at a local church. After the conversation, there was a service walk in the community where we visited community gardens, and we started to chat about the grocery store. And soon thereafter, I functioned kind of in the role of a convener, just bringing people together. Again, these conversations had been happening in the community for years and decades. All of these organizations you see on the screen here represent community members that either live, work, or play on the Near East Side, Bronzeville. We think a lot of our early organizing success is actually due to the diversity of our partners. And we spent the first year just learning about co-ops, some through FCI, and also focusing on alignment. That was really important for us to all be on the same page. This is the current structure of our co-op committee. We recognize it's dynamic and it's ever changing, but you'll see this survey task force is highlighted here. And that's how some of this work that we're going to share with you today came to be. Inspiration. So, nearly a little over a year ago, we were visited by someone you'll recognize here, Baba Malik Yakini of the Detroit People's Food Co-op. He was in town for a food systems conference and came to a dialogue with us. Some of the elders invited him, and he was so excited about the work we were doing and how we were even inspired about their work, and emphasized the need to establish a mission and vision to really center us, create a solid foundation, and prevent mission creep. So we heeded to his instructions. We underwent a two-part workshop. where we actually, the elders in the community rallied for a local Bronzeville community champion to lead this effort. That was Marshall Shorts. He is an artist, a creator, an organizer, and he taught us a lot about, what is a mission, what is a vision, what is it not, and why do we want something like this? Why is a grocery co-op the answer to food access in the community? So the product of that was a two-pager that we still use to this day. We use this to socialize the co-op with partners, community members. It really helps to ground us in each phase of our development. But I won't read it verbatim, but you'll see the mission here. You'll see the vision. And lastly, the values. And I think as we move through each phase of development, we often go back to this and say, okay, is what we're proposing here in line with our values? And as Baba Malik recommended, it has served as a really important tool for us. So yeah, that's a little bit about the origin story and a little bit about the Bronzeville Food Co-op, and you'll be learning a lot more here with my partners.
Thank you, Karima. And I didn't know if you saw in the chat, you had lots of support. This is real life, all good. Mercedes loves dogs, so we're cheering for your dogs. And that awesome intro. And I just want to kind of pull back for a minute and synthesize what you heard. What you saw was listening to an elder in the movement, lessons learned. And when we were reviewing this with the Bronzeville Rockstar organizers, they were like, pause. Karima was like, we paused. And how pauses are essential in co-op organizing. So just want to put that in our pockets for like, these are some really valuable moments to capture from this presentation. And so now we're going to transition from the foundation that Karima has built for us into building from this foundation, knowing about the community. I'm going to turn it over to Karina to talk about what emerged next in their co-op organizing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karina Johnson. Yeah, there we go. I'm Karina Johnson. I'm the Director of Housing and Community Partnerships for the Rise Together Innovation Institute. We are a nonprofit focused on innovative strategies to alleviate poverty, and very interested in the intersection of healthy food access, community partnerships, and community resilience. So really excited to work on this. I'm also the co-founder of Co-op Columbus. We have a good legacy of co-op developers in the state of Ohio, and Co-op Columbus is the baby of the bunch. So we're joining like Co-op Dayton and Co-op Cincinnati. But yeah, that's me. And I was really excited to get involved and add some research and data interests to the great group that we have as part of our steering committee. So one more thing before we change slides. It's important to kind of make the connection from what Karima shared, which is a lot of health and food access data, but we also wanted to hear directly from the community. And so we had a lot of the organizations and some community residents and community leaders at the table, but we wanted to bring in the voice of the community. So we wanted to do a community survey as one of our first steps before we started getting into like market surveys and pro formas and all of that. So, okay, I'm ready. Okay, so we started by researching other surveys. This is just a small sample of some of the surveys we looked at. We met the Austin Community Food Co-op folks at the Up and Coming conference last year, and it was a really good time because I think Austin was doing their survey. And so I asked for a copy of their survey. So that's just a screenshot of their co-op survey. And then I just was Googling other grocery shopping surveys, other co-op surveys. So we looked at best practices and other kind of like a lit review of other food and grocery surveys. That was our first step. Then our second step was decide what we wanted to include in our survey. So we kind of landed on three overarching themes that we saw in other surveys, which was what are folks buying now? Also like wanted to make the case for the fact that there was a need, not just from the data that Karima showed, but also in people's actual thoughts and feelings and actions. So that's kind of like the quantitative and the qualitative. So this is where we started to add some of the qualitative data. So we wanted to know what folks' satisfaction was in the neighborhood. Also, do they know what a co-op is? Would they be interested in joining a co-op? So we wanted to also start to kind of circulate this idea of a co-op, knowing that it might be brand new. I will add some additional background that unlike some other cities, we don't really have a conventional co-op in Columbus. So we're kind of the first. There is a natural food market like the Bexley Co-op, relatively small, has been around for a long time, but not well known and is more of a specialty store. So doing a more conventional co-op, we were going to be one of the first ones. So we wanted to get the word co-op out there. And then, of course, we wanted to understand the demographics, like who's responding to the survey. Does it match the people that we want to serve? And would they be interested in volunteering? So we also saw the survey as a way to promote what we're doing and hopefully get more volunteers. The asterisk there is just that we really focused in on the 2 zip codes that would be surrounding where the grocery store would be located, but the survey was available citywide. So then we designed our survey. So this is our survey. It's a 2-page. So this is the front page. The first page, what you're seeing there is that first section. What are your grocery habits or your shopping habits, and what kind of things do you like to buy? How satisfied are you with the grocery options in your neighborhood? And then the second page has, have you heard of a co-op? Would you want to be a member of a co-op? And then the demographics section around age, zip code, and income. And then at the very bottom, would you be interested in volunteering? So what you're looking at is the paper version of the survey. You'll hear more about why we had a paper version, but most people filled this out online using a standard like type form. So they weren't seeing it like this, but we wanted to share this paper version with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Karina. So now you understand the survey design, right? They talked through the process, built a survey. You got a survey. Okay, now what do you do with it? How do you get it out and share kind of the storytelling, the branding and website that you can build your visual identity, and what are the tools you use to reach your community? So I'm going to turn it over to Juliana to introduce herself and share about what came next in getting the survey out there.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Juliana Silveira, Director of Planning and Urban Design with the Neighborhood Design Center. The Neighborhood Design Center is a 501c3 nonprofit organization here in Columbus. We are a multidisciplinary design shop. And I got involved in this process actually through Karima. I reached out to her to get some food access data from her, and she's like, wait a minute, I think you can support us. So we have an ongoing contract with the Department of Development with the City of Columbus, and we pitched that idea for them, and they were kind enough to kind of let us use that contract to support this effort. So it's, it's a limited fund. We are supporting the effort across the different committees that you saw that Karima shared before. But today I'm going to focus on the survey branding, the outreach portion of this effort. So why branding? I want to first distinguish there's a difference between branding the process and branding the co-op. But when you're going to do outreach, especially if you know that's going to be a lengthy process, it's going to go across multiple months, it's good that the community have that brand identity that they can relate to. So when you send a postcard or you send an email or you go to a website, you can relate back and understand that's part of the same process, right? Like we are who are involved in the weeds of the process, we know where that message is coming from, but you can't expect that from the residents and the large community that you're trying to outreach. Yes, so once we set that branding, then like how you get the word out. So it's very common that the 2 main things that we use for this outreach effort was postcards and flyers. So the postcards, as Karina said, we are trying to horn in into the geographies of Bronzeville and Near East Side. So we use the EDDM from UPS post office, and we mailed about 12,000 postcards to those targeted zip codes. And in addition, there's like another 3,000 postcard that got dropped off in multiple locations, kind of semi-public or even private, like if there are businesses that you can count on, if you have a good relationship, libraries, recreation centers, all of those are always great places to get the word out with the community. And similarly, you see there's a flyer that goes along with that branding. So people who got the postcard and got the flyer, they know it's the same process that they are kind of responding to. Another thing that we did with those components was to add an accessibility language. We understand that not everybody respond to online survey well. Some people have that limitation. There's also language access, the opportunity to respond to survey by phone. So all of those were taken into consideration, and all of that with the input of that task force that was put in place. So it was definitely like a team, a group effort that we had there. There's one more thing I want to say about that, but that's okay. So when you respond to the survey at the end, will take you to the website. If you're able to create like a landing page where folks who say, oh, what is this really about? Where can I get more information about it? Or even how can I get involved? So the website functions as a place that the community can get updated, but also starts that listserv that you wanted to then reach out to do outreach and education and whatnot. In terms of the survey responses, I'm going to start from the end of the survey, which is who responded to the survey. You can see on the map where I have the star there. Those are the 2 zip codes that are for the Bronzeville Near East Side area. And that's where most of our responses came from. And that proves the efficiency or the efficacy of the postcards, right? Like we got most of the responses from the places we did those mailers. So now go back. And 66% of it was from the Near East Side. We also like to look at the demographics so that when you're reporting back, it's important that you say, is this survey representative of the community, or is it representative of the folks that responded to the survey? So there's a difference there, but also helps to tabulate that with actual demographic data, and some of the answers might be important to kind of horn in some of those demographics. So I guess one example I have for that is one of the questions we asked was how much people spend on groceries. So that is important to couple with other answers, right? Like what is the income and how many people live in that household. Those are 2 things that influence. So those are just one quick example on how to tabulate the information and how why it's important to know who responded to the survey. We also have like women being the primary respondent to the survey. That's very common on survey. And in a food co-op, that's not a bad thing, since most of the time women are doing the grocery shopping for their households. Another thing that we noticed, like there's an overwhelming support to having a grocery co-op in the area. So 86% of folks said that they would likely shop at the co-op, and there's like 58% people interested in helping, volunteering to take that co-op off the ground. And those people included their email. So now the outreach committee has those contacts that they can reach out to and say, hey, how you would really want to get involved to support this effort. We also see that, like, for example, 60% heard of the co-op. So there's some educational component that might need to be added to get, to more folks really understanding what a co-op means. And another thing that we learned from the survey is that the community members, like Bronzeville respondents, are not happy with the shopping choices they have today, and they oftentimes have to travel far distance to get the groceries that they need. It also inform in terms of grocery preferences that will kind of help the group to decide what kind of products they're gonna have in there. Also understand like what would entice folks to become members. So that's not necessarily comprehensive, but at least gives a little bit of an insight and maybe spark additional questions that we need to keep asking. For me, one of the great things about this survey response was like, it's about what I have in the red text there. It's like community will support the co-op, but it's also about the co-op supporting the community. So that's that very uniqueness of being located in Bronzeville. I think that's all I had.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Juliana. And just to share a couple things coming from the chat here, that shout out from Roderick at Shared Capital Cooperative saying, thank you for calling out. The professional branding is so valuable, right? So just want to give a little bit of love to that. And also just Siobhan says, these look amazing, right? The intentionality in designing the survey. And Brian from Grand Rapids says, love the numbers and what they represent. So thank you, community, for that feedback. And so wow, right? Wow, is everyone else feeling wow? This is a steering committee. This is early organizing co-op, has already done this level of outreach in their community. Their team beautifully designed and branded this community survey, but how did you actually get it out there? So I want to turn it over to Eric to talk about what are the strategies that your organizing team used on the ground to reach people in your community?
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Hutchison, Bronzeville resident, also former Near East Area Commissioner. I'll explain that more during my presentation. So I want to talk a little bit about the community-informed approach and give you a little background. I think many of you will be trying to build co-ops in new neighborhoods, or even if you're within the neighborhood, you might be looking for ways to engage. So I think this background will be helpful. I moved to Bronzeville in 2015. As you've already indicated, Bronzeville is a historically Black neighborhood, and I'm a fairly new resident there, of course. Early on, I started within a few years, I started to engage with the Near East Area Commission.
You're muted, Eric.
Totally my fault. I apologize. I was trying to mute someone else. My apologies.
Okay. Hopefully it's in the area of the commission that happened. Early on, I started to engage with the Near East Area Commission. Commissions were established in Columbus to represent the neighborhoods. Most of them started to represent underrepresented neighborhoods like Bronzeville would have been. They're a little bit unique. There's some areas throughout the country that has them, but they're a little bit unique. So I wanted to explain that a little bit. Eventually, I did win. I did have the support of the community and won a seat representing the neighborhood that I was still relatively new to. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to represent that community and its diversity and so forth as much as possible. So I worked with existing, network that I had, but was introduced to new mentors and elders, and they thankfully volunteered much of their time to engage with me to help me understand what other community organizations, civics, and neighborhood organizations, and so forth that I could engage with to help make sure I represent the community appropriately. With that said, some of the things they specifically helped me with is the network of organizations and civics to engage. I highlight organizations because not everyone is represented by a civic, and again, I wanted to make sure we were trying to engage with everyone. use NEAC email and social media. There are neighborhood forums in our area that we used. And then we talked about the civic organizations. We'll be more specific in the next slides. The on the ground game started with in-person outreach. So we tabled at community meals, food pantries, wellness events, apartment lobbies, distributed surveys at community meetings and church events. And as a reminder, we had paper surveys that we had at all of our in-person events, making sure that we could engage with generally it was elders, but anyone that had issues with technology and were more comfortable filling out a paper survey. And then engage directly with seniors and families, early learning centers and community centers, childcare centers. To the right there, you see an example of a form we used, a tool we used to organize the events, make sure we had what we needed to be at the event, identify the event, and who's the point person. Thank you, Karima. Next, in the on the ground game, newsletters and social media promotion. We shared email newsletters, promoted through local Facebook pages, neighborhood pages, community networks, church blog posts, our website with a pop-up link. There were a few times through the survey process where we discussed boosting our Facebook posts, whether we need to pay to boost those. So we did discuss it at least 2 times throughout the process. You saw the results of the survey with 954 respondents. In the end, we did not need to boost those in order to achieve that. And to the right, you'll see a talking points we use to guide our social media and make sure that our messaging was consistent. Lastly, print materials and word of mouth. We distributed the postcards to local businesses, libraries, community centers, pantries, high school sports, etc. In addition to what we mailed and mentioned earlier. Flyers at apartment complexes, community centers, and coffee shops. And then we had all of us on the steering committee and other volunteers that we engaged we asked to share them personally and within our networks and group chats. And to the right there is another version of our flyer that we used for our distribution.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you to the whole Bronzeville Food Co-op team. You were just getting kind of the high level highlight snippets of what is a lot more work underneath that, right? And I just want to give you all a shout out for sharing this amazing story with your national peers in the startup community. And I don't see a ton of questions in the chat, so please put your questions in the chat. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask a question, which is, this was like a multi-layered process. There's so much that went into each phase of this and so much intentionality that yielded a really dynamic outreach process where you said you got lots of responses with emails of like, yes, I want to volunteer to build this co-op, right? So you've already built this really solid foundation. 950 something people know about you have actually taken the time to fill out the survey, right? So my first question is around, what lessons did you learn from this process? And maybe we could stop sharing just so we can see each other, unless there's anything else on the PowerPoint organizers that you want. Okay, cool.
And before, I guess if I can jump in really quick, before I even answer your question, Bonnie, I wanted to, because you mentioned the number of responses, and I do that, like the Community Design Center, Neighborhood Design Center, we do a lot of the public meetings, community outreach. This is an overwhelming amount of responses for the targeted population that we had. Like we distributed 12,000, we got almost 1,000 responses, and that a lot is because of the groundwork that this group did. So it's almost double of what it would normally get for the population target that we are trying to reach. I just want to give that highlight.
Yeah, give yourselves that shout out because that's what it feels like from the outside. Like that's a lot of that's a lot of survey results, an engaged community. There's a lot of things in your survey that demonstrate interest and passion from the community right off the go. Like if you are thinking about sharing this with your startup friends across the country, is there anything from this process that you would do differently, or if there's anything you want to hone in on that you think is really important to note for other folks that are wanting to design a survey and community outreach strategy?
I can go, and maybe other folks will have something to add. We did, and Juliana would know more about this. We did have like some drop off on the survey. So we might have been a little ambitious in terms of all the questions we asked. So maybe a little bit less questions would be good just because people only have so much time. I don't know if we mentioned that the survey on average took about 10 minutes to complete, but maybe 5 minutes would have been better than 10 minutes. And then I think engaging more volunteers. So we have a couple people who helped outside of the people you see in this webinar, but it was definitely a case of like 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. So for the 2 months or so, maybe three, that we had the survey open, it was like very intense. Like Eric and Karima and I, and then Juliana sometimes were just like out there every day, every weekend, during the holidays. So maybe don't have it go live in like October and then spend your Thanksgiving and Christmas break doing outreach. And it was also cold. But that being said, lots of great responses. Anyone else have anything to add in terms of lessons learned?
I will jump in and say, like, definitely pare it down. We were very curious. We had done the, quantitative data, but we really wanted to hear from the community. So there was so much we wanted to know. Yeah, the seasonality of it. How do we paired it with maybe a community conversation or an event in the summer or spring when it's warm out? Maybe we wouldn't have had to do as much of push individually. But I think we also maybe underestimated the number of elders that wouldn't take the survey online. And so ensuring that you have volunteers equipped to take phone calls and sit with, someone who is going to tell you a story for 20 minutes before they actually answer the first of 40 questions, it's very time intensive. So, just remembering, what you'll need on the front end.
Great. Thank you. Now we've got some good questions rolling in the chat here. So I'm gonna infuse some of these in. So, and first of all, you're getting some shout outs from your peers around, wow, that really 954, this is really impressive. And so related to that, and I think part of that, what we heard, and Karina's giving Eric a shout out, is who are the people in your community that know all of the events that are happening in the neighborhood? Because a lot of what you heard was they weren't sitting around and waiting and like tabling in one place for people to come find them to take their survey. They were putting their survey out at community events that already brought together folks, right? So that partnership, the amount of infused partnerships involved in this process is really coming through. And I think helping that community dinners, meetings, lunches, senior centers, right? They were going out into the community from the go. So one of the first questions is, how do you utilize volunteers to help in your outreach effort?
We separated our entire steering committee into work groups, and one was outreach. And so the outreach work group helped look over all the drafts of all the surveys as we were developing them, give input on the flyer language, test the actual survey. And then when we went live, we actually had weekly meetings, and every week it was like, what do you know that's happening? Eric usually had all the answers, but what do you know that's happening and who can do what? And a lot of it was actually going to some of the housing developments. We have senior centers and also affordable housing, and we would speak to the property managers or the resident services team and just show up with donuts and paper surveys. And so a lot of it was like just go to where the people are. Anyone else have anything to add on volunteer?
Yeah, I would add. I think we mentioned a little bit earlier. It might, as an upgrade, it might have been nice to have a larger group of volunteers to draw from. We're building that from the survey. So one of the next areas of engagement is going to be tabling at events through the summer, very similar to what we did with the survey, to continue to teach people about the co-op. And we've got a volunteer list that we're starting to engage to help us table those events.
Great. And I see a question here that was just answered, but I'm gonna also say it out loud. From Juliet from Rocky Mountain Farmers Union was like, how, from the beginning stage of branding to the survey results analysis, what was the timeline, and did it match your expected timeline? And we heard from Juliana that she was thoughtful about, this is going to be a long, we need to budget in at least months. And that was part of what led to that intentional investment in branding and design. And so, Karima, you answered. I don't know if you want to answer out loud or you want me to read it.
And then I'll open it up to Juliana, who would know more intimately the timeline, as she is, our paid firm here, design firm. But we really started researching surveys at the tail end of the summer, looking at maybe even the USDA Food Insecurity Survey, Karina mentioned the Austin one that we came about in September. So, but it was really forming that task force, that ad hoc group. We have the steering committee, but the survey task force was approximately 8 people as opposed to like 16. And that intensive really helped us, focus our resources and our time into doing it. But Juliet asked, how much time should you budget? And, I'll kick it off to Juliana, but the data analysis takes a lot of time, and kind of synthesizing that, stratifying it, you figuring out what you want to put into reporting. So although we may be finished in 4-ish months, maybe budgeting 6 months. Juliana, would you agree?
I agree. I guess my first advice would be, first ask your question, what are you trying to learn from the survey? Right? What is it that you're trying, the kind of information that you gather? So when we did the task force group, that was one of my first questions, and then just sitting and trying to see different perspectives. What do you want to do with the survey after you get the results? It's really important to kind of almost know upfront, so that you can also manage how long your survey is going to be. But to Karima's point, there is like a little bit of a budget time that you need to do upfront for the reviews, who's going to be in charge, especially if you're doing by committee. So there are more voices on the table. That takes longer, right? Like if you want to really move at the pace of trust, as I say, there is a combination of things in place. If it's like just one person putting it together, it might go quicker. But if you really want to be reflective of the steering committee and what the group wants to learn, it might take a little bit more time. Yeah, in terms of analyzing, also budget at least 2 months, I would say, because you do need to do a first pass and then download demographic information and start to tabulate that information, and and really get that storytelling piece from it.
Great, thank you. Another question came in around, how did you shape your marketing approach to recruit member owners as a result of the survey? Or did you? Was that one of the goals?
So we are, I guess, viewing this at the research and planning stage. Like, is this feasible? Do people want it? Not at the member recruitment stage, thinking that we wouldn't want to try to engage or recruit members for something we don't even know if it's wanted or needed. So we do see that stage coming very soon. And want to kind of continue to engage with the FCI. We're in one of the peer learning groups to understand when's the right time, like the right time to incorporate, the right time to open the bank account, the right time to start taking money, because we just want to be really careful. We had one of our partner cities, peer cities in Cincinnati, who we think got pretty far down the road and then weren't able to open. And so they have some regrets about letting down the community. So we're trying to be really careful about like when we would say this is happening. So even in the language, we're like, we want to bring a grocery store, not we're bringing a grocery store, because, you know, we're still having some internal dialogue as a group around what size store should we have? Should it be standalone or mixed use with apartments on top? Like there's a lot of things we still need to decide before we would be ready to say, here's exactly what we're doing. But if you guys, I also said, like, if you have tips for volunteer engagement, share with us. If you have tips for member recruitment, like we see this as, you know, a dialogue. We're learning from you guys as well.
We got a question about cost. I can share. So
Yes, please.
the Neighborhood Design Center is a nonprofit organization, as I mentioned in the beginning. We do have a contract with the Department of Development to support some underserved areas in the Columbus community. And Bronzeview falls within that geography. So we put a scope together and they funded the NDC portion of the outreach. But there's also costs involved in the printing materials and the DDM, the website, right? Like, because you do need to pay for those as well. And that was an additional grant from one of the partners, the Ohio State University. So I put the costs together. They jumped in kind of filling those in. So
Can you tell what those costs are, Juliana, just so people have an idea? Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, so the engagement and outreach, we got about 7,500. Jesus, my Portuguese sometimes gets in the way of numbers. And for the outreach, like collaterals and EDDM and whatnot, there was about $5,000 that covered down to the sand, the domain, the website, the printing of all the collaterals that you saw, and the EDDM on itself, because it costs about 22 cents per mail piece if you use UPS or USPS. We do have an account as an organization. We do that all the time for our outreach.
Thank you. And can you explain, are you saying EDDM? What does that mean?
It's the direct mailers.
Mhm.
I don't know the exact acronym. I just call it EDDM, but I know that it stands for direct mailers using the U.S. Postal Service.
Cool. And so what I'm hearing is total budget to do something like this would be $12,000 to $13,000. Does that sound right?
Correct. Yes.
Which is actually fairly reasonable. It sounds like a lot when you're in the very start of organizing thing, but that's very reasonable for what you accomplished and the outreach that you were able to do in your community. Okay, we've got a bunch of new questions coming in. I think kind of related to this, and I just want it's in the chat, but I want you to share a little bit more about it. Okay, you've done this survey, so you have these results, and now sort of like the now what, right? Like now what do you have to Tim was like, what do you have to talk about now, right? So what are you going to talk about next?
Yeah, and I encourage everyone else to jump in too. But the last deliverable of our partnership with the Neighborhood Design Center, we started with the community survey. Um, uh, is a pitch package. So they helped us with the branding, and the website. We had a workshop folded in there as well, related to branding that Marshall Schwartz, who we shared, assisted with. So some of those funds went to support his facilitation. But the last is a pitch package, and that is what we hope to use to socialize the idea of co-op, not only to potential partners, but also funders. So the data from the survey, we're currently analyzing, extracting, and we're going to form into likely like a 4-page front and back, so brochure type of print that Neighborhood Design Center will be assisting with. We have formed, as of yesterday, a pitch package task force. So again, an intensive 1-month project where, we're getting all, jumping in to do the work and get it done with hopes of maybe like, end of April, having that ready to go. So the survey was important for us to validate the need, but also be able to demonstrate that in some of our promotion coming up.
Thanks, Karima.
And I can add what
Yeah.
I put in the chat, which is that sharing the survey results to the people who filled out the survey, plus all the other people that we think should know about this. Like now we feel like we have a tangible reason to start a survey, or sorry, start a newsletter, start social media, start sharing. We feel like this is like the momentum that we needed to say this is not just, 15 steering committee members, but like the community wants this. And then we think there's a lot of education. We're very inspired by what we learned at the conference, that this is not just about, solving for food access, but it's also about creating a movement. And so that's going to mean a lot of community education. So we're looking to be at events in the community with information on like what is a co-op. We know that Co-op Dayton has a lot of good graphics, so we need to go knock on their door. And because you shared, I think, Bonnie, in your workshop at the conference, like examples of like how you kind of catch people's attention when they're walking by. So what is a co-op? Can everybody shop there? Of course, those kinds of things. But starting to build our interest lists. And then Austin, we know, does a really good job. Bonnie, you shared about this too, of having that timeline. So every time the newsletter goes out, here's where we're at in the progress. So we want to tell people about our market study, our pro forma, as we start to zero in on a site. So hopefully they can walk alongside us as we continue to make progress, and then finding the right time to start doing the member drive.
Yeah, thank you for talking that through. And I love that you called out kind of, it's like how your organizing inspiration is your movement building, right? So you're going to approach this very differently. And I'm not hearing any of your goals being transactional, right? And so that's why you're kind of building this base up. And all of this is going, when you get to the point of launching your membership drive, you're going to see it. You will see it because you have done this initial outreach, right? You've done, there's already a level of engagement and participation. So thank you for kind of talking about the philosophy that you're using as you're organizing, which is really important. I know we're getting to the top of the hour now, and there's a lot of other good questions in the chat, kind of talking about how do you fundraise for something like this, and how do you engage folks. But knowing, city's economic development department, great place to hit up. That was part of where their grant came from, 7,500 of that, and a local hospital to pay for the mailers. Local hospitals that are, organizations that are interested in community health, another great example to call out of folks to approach and show them and ask them kind of like, what's your mission? What's your vision and values? Hey, look at how that correlates with our mission, vision, and values. Let's work together, right? So this is a great testimony of how you can do that even before you're incorporated and early on in organizing in this community outreach. And this is going to help the hospital, right? Knowing these things, knowing this community, getting this pulse in the community and feedback is really going to help many organizations in the community. So thinking about that as your outreach and organizing approach. And I'm hearing too some requests exactly for, can you show us a copy of the postcard, flyer, and survey? JQ is going to get you those really valuable resources. So yeah, you're going to get, you don't have to recreate the wheel, and you can learn from the Bronzeville Food Co-op rock stars who also P6, right, from other communities that they've mentioned, so that we don't have to recreate anything from the start. I know we're getting to the top now, and any other question I think is going to be too juicy. So let's give a round of applause, however you want to do it, to the awesome rock stars at Bronzeville Food Co-op for, preemptively reaching out, suggesting this. You see how effective they are as organizers. And I just want to call out and make it super clear. There's not big egos in this room. They are organizers. They are movement builders. They are mutual aid perspective. That is huge. That is huge in being able to accomplish this, right? And being able to really start your co-op organizing process from a community organizing framework and asset-based development. Even organizing with them, they were all like shouting each other out, talking about, oh, well, yeah, Eric's the on-the-ground guy. He knows everything. Well, Juliana knows how to design the exact survey tool and get the, right? So it's really something that I hope you all take away from getting to witness this from them. So thank you all so much. And JQ, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What a session. Incredible session. And I do thank you so much to everyone on the Bronzeville Food Co-op organizing team. And thank you to Bonnie Hudspeth of Firebrand Cooperative for keeping us facilitated and keeping the conversation moving today. Great. Really, really appreciate you. Real quick, I'm going to say the group has said that some of them can stay after. We're going to wrap up the recording here and just give me a couple minutes, but then we're going to continue the conversation after the recording a little bit if anyone wants to stay and continue to talk. But thank you again so much to the Bronzeville Food Co-op team. This was incredible. We are definitely going to be recommending this video to many, many early startup food co-ops. We have just emailed you a 2-minute long survey. Speaking of surveys, it is very, very short, and the survey is really critical to us. One, to continue to know that you want these kind of peer presentations, what is helpful to you, and also two, it helps us keep this series free when we can show our sponsors and our grantors that this series is effective, that you guys want it to keep coming. So if you could just answer that for us as your way of thanking us for putting on these sessions, we would really appreciate it. We have coming up later today, we have timelines, internal and external, not nearly necessarily as exciting. With me, I will be going over that with you guys today at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then tomorrow, we are kicking off the day with a session I'm so excited about. This is going to be facilitated by Darnell Adams of Firebrand Co-op. Saviorism, no. Cooperation, yes. They're going to be talking about how do we organize with our communities, not for our communities, which is true cooperation and builds effective, successful co-ops. So I think it's going to be an incredible conversation. You're going to want to be there for it with Amaha, Zanzele, and Tama, so don't miss it. And then we have 2 more sessions as well tomorrow and a whole nother week, Monday through Thursday, next week of sessions. You can find them all at our website as fci.coop. And if you need /FCI live, all one word. One more time, thank you again to all of our sponsors. We had a record number of sponsors for this series this year because they believe in the startup food co-op movement. We are so grateful to all of them. They make all of this possible. All right, and